Welcome back to another episode of Rock Boys Football. Clemson, Dabo Swinney, they've been one of the hottest teams in all of college football in late September and into the month of October, coming off a bye week, head into what I think is by far their most difficult stretch of their 2024 schedule. I think a lot of Clemson fans should be fired up for the month of November. We're going to get a real sense for just how good this Clemson team is, where I think most importantly, if you're Clemson, you want to show the college football playoff committee that this is a different team than what we all saw week one against Georgia. This is their opportunity to do so. I mean, there's one gimme game on this schedule, that's Citadel at home. Outside of that, these are four very good teams that I think most excitingly, I don't know if that's a word, is going to test Clemson in certain ways that we want to see Clemson tested over the next couple of weeks. Fired up to get into this one. Before we do, and as always, to the Clemson fans, I think most notably, are we buying stock in this Clemson team? Like, I've been very vocal. I've bought all the Clemson stock possible over the last couple of weeks. I know there are still some Clemson fans that, might be in wait and see mode for the month of November. So let it fly in the comment section. Would love to hear from you guys. Without further ado, let's get into this one. And I want to start with the conversation of, look, Clemson has everything they want to achieve in front of them. Like, you run the table, you go undefeated in the ACC, you get to the ACC championship game, and you win that football game, you're into the college football playoffs. That's what's exciting for Clemson fans. What about the conversation of, what if Clemson runs the table here, finishes the season 11-1, goes to the ACC championship, loses that football game against Miami? Does an 11-2 Clemson team get into the college football playoffs? I would probably argue yes, but it's kind of dependent on a couple of different things. I think most notably, how does this Clemson team look over the next couple of weeks? You're playing some really, really good football teams. Do you look like you're a top 12 team in the country? I think that's the first conversation to have. And then there's just an element of, what does it look like in the college football landscape around Clemson? How does the SEC shake out? Where we're trending right now is that, look, the SEC is just beating each other up. And so I think there's going to be a lot of 2 and 3 loss SEC teams. So if you're Clemson, you want to put a stamp on these football games and kind of show you're that dominant Clemson team that I think they can be in the month of November. Now, I think the second exciting conversation is, each game on this schedule outside of the Citadel is going to represent some different tests so we understand just how good Clemson is. I want to start with Louisville. I think the Clemson defense is going to get tested here. You look at Louisville, a disappointing year from this Louisville defense. This Louisville offense can put up points with just about anybody in the country. Keep in mind, all three of their losses have been one-score losses. They played Notre Dame on the road, outgained them by over 100 yards, lost that football game. Yeah, Louisville has 3 losses on the schedule so far. It's a very good football team. And we kind of dove into some of the matchups. One of the things that, kind of has concerned Clemson fans over the last couple of weeks, it hasn't been the offense, which is currently scoring 42 points per game. That's number 4 in the country. It's the Clemson defense. No, I've kind of taken the stance that I think Dabo Swinney has been pretty aggressive in terms of putting the 2s and 3s in maybe earlier than he should in these football games. So I think the defensive numbers don't necessarily accurately reflect how good this Clemson defense is. But any way you cut it, I think there's another gear for this Clemson defense. And I think it starts playing Louisville at home. And you look at the thing I'm paying attention to most is the communication in the back end. Jeff Brown, we talked about this in the preview. He's a wizard at scheming things up. If you're Clemson and you're a Clemson fan, you want to see this Clemson offense or defense, excuse me, just play some clean football, not blow any coverages, communicate in the back end. I was kind of under the proponent. I'll still kind of bang the table for it. Would like to see them get more into that cover one man. Like, I want to see them play some more man coverage where you're kind of taking the equation of communication out of it and just saying, hey, we got some really good defensive backs. Avian Terrell headlines it, but Jaden Lucas has been playing really good football on the other side. Let's go challenge these Louisville wide receivers. I don't think Louisville's wide receivers can beat up on these Clemson defensive backs. Take the communication out of it and just ask these Clemson defensive backs to be dudes on the outside. I kind of like to see that, but I think any way you cut it, and any Dabo, Swinney, Westcott, they're much smarter than me at designing a defense and scheming a defense. You want to see this Clemson defense take a step coming out of the bye week. They're going to get an immediate test against Louisville. Now you go on the road to Virginia Tech. The biggest test I see in this football game, this Virginia Tech pass rush is just about as good as any pass rush that you'll see in the country. How good is this Clemson offensive line? It has looked really good. They're running the football like one of the best teams in the country. Cade Klubnik is having some very clean pockets to operate from. It was a problem in 2023. Dabo Swinney brings in Matt Luke. It appears to have really worked out for Matt Luke for this Clemson offensive line. This is by far the best defensive front that you would have seen. It's going to be this maybe outside of South Carolina. Like you played Georgia, and we kind of saw what happened in that game. Although I don't think the offensive line was horrible. You go on the road at Virginia Tech, hostile environment. How good is this Clemson offensive line? We've seen it look really good against teams like Virginia and Wake Forest, and as a Wake Forest alum myself, we just don't have the dudes to test the dudes that Clemson has on the offensive line. Virginia Tech does. And so how good does that Clemson offensive line look on the road in a hostile environment? That is what I'm looking for in that game. You go on the road at Pitt. My biggest question mark here is Pat Narduzzi and this Pitt defense. It's been turning on. We just saw what Pitt did to Kyle McCord in Syracuse on Thursday night. A lot of different looks, a lot of different pressure and coverage packages. My question there is Cade. Cade has looked great throughout the months of September and October. He's going to be tested by one of the better defensive minds that we see in this sport on the road against Pitt. That might be an undefeated Pitt team at this time. Does Cade look like the quarterback that we've seen throughout the last couple of weeks of the season, where, again, this is going to be a step above the defenses that we've seen Clemson play over the last couple of weeks? Citadel, glorified bye week, which is it's coming at a good time because then you get South Carolina at home, and the South Carolina team is not the South Carolina team we thought we'd see heading into 2024. This defense is legit. Very similar conversation that we had about Virginia Tech. We're going to have about South Carolina. This South Carolina pass rush whooped up on Alabama. It's pretty much whooped up on every single team that they've played over the last couple of weeks. It's one of the best pass rush units that you see in the country, specifically coming from those edge rushers. Again, another test for Clemson at home this time to show that this offensive line is college football playoff caliber. And if you can take care of business, you go in the ACC championship. In a perfect world, you win that game and you're getting a bye in the college football playoffs. In a not so perfect world, what if Clemson loses that game in the ACC championship? Does Clemson get into the college football playoffs with an 11-2 record with an ACC conference that, quite frankly, hasn't been that great? That's probably the question. And I think to answer that question, one, it obviously depends on what the other teams in that top 20 kind of shake out like. I think more importantly, or just as importantly, it kind of matters about the eyeball test. Like, are you putting a stamp? Are you dominating these football games? That's kind of what you're looking for Clemson. The tests are going to get harder for Clemson. Can they continue to answer those tests? But answer those tests and show that you can answer those tests in kind of dominant fashion. If you can do that, you put yourself in a position where you're going to the ACC championship game where you clearly want to win. You want to get a bye in the college football playoffs. You want to win an ACC championship. But I think more importantly, it allows you to have some leniency. And say you lose that game in a close one, you probably still get into the college football playoffs if you look the part in the month of November. This is Clemson's chance. It's a chance for us to really understand how good this Clemson team is. Even going back to when they lost against Georgia and what we've seen over the last couple of weeks, you kind of get a sense this team can be dangerous. Just how dangerous can they be in the playoffs? That's what we're going to find out over the next couple of weeks. Fired up for this one. We'll cut it out there. Appreciate you guys rocking with it. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. Much more importantly for the Clemson fans, I know we don't want to think about this, but it is a reality of the sport. If Clemson runs the table and loses to Miami in the ACC championship, does Clemson get into the playoffs? Would love to hear from you guys in the comments section. Appreciate y'all rocking with it. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. We'll talk to y'all later. Peace.